other, you're going to have problems. Those borders are not easy to keep contained. And we have opened our airport. We have one variant in Tobago from Brazil. Chances are the other variant is here, and it's going to be here. And I ask people to please be careful and to get the vaccination. Please read my article in the newspaper today. Trinidad Guardian, page 12. It focuses on the economic situation that people are facing, but also the need for the vaccines. Please take a look. The other issue that's important for our consideration today is the Standard & Poor's report that came in yesterday. There are two immediate takeaways from the Standard & Poor's report. One is that they have revised our outlook. That's to say, the outlook of Trinidad and Tobago to negative from stable. It was stable before. We had got a lower grade. We had been downgraded but stable, and now we continue with the downgrade, and we have moved from stable to negative. And one of the things that the report highlights is the limited effectiveness of the policy response. They are not altogether negative on that. I will read from the document so that you will have a sense. But it is important to recognize those two takeaways. One, that we have been moved from stable to negative. And secondly, the limited policy response is a factor. The second thing related to this that I need to mention to you is that the IMF country report number 20/291, I think the last report of that kind that we had was 2019, if I'm not mistaken. That report on Trinidad and Tobago noted that the banking system was well capitalized and liquid, but exposed to sovereign risk. And that is what the assessment by Moody's and by Standard & Poor's are about. And potential liquidity risks stemming from non-bank financial entities. So it is something we bear in mind. It is something I spoke about when I was a member of Parliament. Referring to that report, I spoke about it in 2019. So I draw it to your attention, and let us look at what Moody's says now. It's important to know. What does Moody's say? Let's try and see that. This writing is so small, I'm going to have to use my glasses. We are revising our outlook on Trinidad and Tobago to negative from stable, and affirming our ratings, including our BBB minus long-term sovereign credit rating on the country. I want to read as well what they say about the negative outlook. The negative outlook reflects our view that there is at least a 1 in 3 chance that we could lower the ratings over the 12 to 24-month period. That's a period ahead. We expect the decline in energy production to reverse, but you have seen what is happening with BP, etc. So we have problematic issues there over the next 2 years, and the economy to return to growth by next year. Well, that is speculative. This uptick should significantly reduce the government's fiscal deficit and eventually stabilize its net debt to GDP ratio. figures. However, it remains uncertain whether this improvement will be sufficient to bring the per capita income back towards early levels following 5 years of negative real GDP per capita growth on a sustained basis. So Standard & Poor's is taking a very optimistic outlook, but there are many conditions. And whether we can meet those conditions is doubtful in the current circumstances. They talk about the downside and upside scenario, and I want to give you both because I don't want to give you false information or skewed information here. Downside scenario, we could lower the ratings over the next 2 years. So they are saying that this ratings, which when you put Moody's and Standard & Poor's together, really puts us in the junk category. We could further lower the ratings over the next 2 years. Further is my word. If we believe that the GDP growth is insufficient to recover the economic resilience as measured by GDP per capita, that was lost during the 5 years of falling per capita income. We could also lower the ratings if the external debt position or the current debt burden deteriorates beyond our expectations, or if we believe that the government's policy choices have weakened support for long-term sustainable public finances and balanced economic growth. Now, we have a debt problem. Our debt to GDP ratio is now 86%. We have $132 million in debt. The Minister of Finance very recently borrowed, and has indicated his appetite for more borrowing, so that's a problem. And I want to let you know that the GDP has declined by close to 10%, 8.2%, and that is outlined here in the Standard & Poor's report. I want to give you the other side, the optimistic side, the upside scenario. In other words, what would be necessary for us to move upward in the grading by Moody's. We could revise our outlook to stable. They could take it back to stable over the next 12 to 20 months. If strong economic performance and favorable long-term GDP growth prospects help stabilize the recent erosion of the sovereign's financial profile, a more resilient and prosperous economy, along with improved fiscal outcomes that stabilize the rise in government debt burden and ease external pressures, could lead to a stable outlook. So what are they looking for? They are looking for growth. They are looking for growth in GDP. They are looking for a management of debt. And those are the things that will make a difference going forward. Whether or not that will happen is another matter altogether. I think we have a pretty challenging situation, and I don't see the policy measures being taken to either address the stabilization of debt, it is growing. I don't see the interventions that are required for growth. So we continue to have declines in the GDP. Our per capita income is now $15,000 US. You know, we had a per capita income of over $20,000, and it has been reduced to about 17. It had been reduced to about 17 over the last 5 years of decline, but it is now at 15. So that's not good. I want to give you the response of the Minister of Finance, which has not really been helpful, because he says that the Honorable Colin Minister has declared that this decision validates our strategy to support the economy in the short term while having a clear plan to put our public finances back under control. I mean, I find that a startling statement in the context of the reality. And he says that the rating agency, Standard & Poor's, S&P, has affirmed Trinidad and Tobago's investment grade rating of BBB minus. Well, I told you just now it's junk status, really. And now that it's unstable, downgraded, we have a problem. And he talks about the investment, Trinidad and Tobago as an investment destination. As you know, the investment in Trinidad and Tobago has been negative. And basically, people have been investing outside of Trinidad rather than inside. So this is an issue that we will continue to follow. But we now have Ambassador Granderson. Sorry? Is he on the line?
Hello?
Morning.
Morning. Could I get on the program, please?
Who is this? It's a caller. Sorry.
Yeah, caller.
Yes, of course, please.
Yes, morning, Mr. Terry.
Morning.
Every morning I've been looking at your program and I see you have some really interesting people who've been in your program talking about the economy and whatever it is.
We try.
It's so good to know because of the fact that you don't have everybody telling about the truth.
Yes.
And I'm glad to hear the truth that what you'll be bringing out and the people that will be bringing to telling us also what the economy is like.
Sure.
Only this morning papers I read about... Hello?
Yes, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, only this morning papers I read about the government going to borrow $175 million US again for transport infrastructure. Now, I do not know if you have been around the areas like where I live, like in Bhoe here. We have some of the worst roads you could think about in the whole, maybe the Caribbean.
I agree with you.
And we see nothing in sight that we get in this thing repaired because every time now, more so now that we have the COVID and I want to believe that we can't get anything done. Right? I didn't call this one to bash anybody, but it's a congratulations on the work you're doing. But at the same time, as on the program, I want to let you know, Mr. Thierry, that for the last 6 years, we haven't had anything at all for the small man in this country. Nothing.
Yes.
And not even so, we're talking about road, pension, we're talking about price of goods and services, we're talking about the gas. And I want to just ask if you could get somebody in the country to name one item that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago has enjoyed rather than going up. This one we want to say, somebody say something drop and we could enjoy that luxury of having a cheaper item for the last 6 years. Again, Mr. Terry, I want to congratulate you and tell you that your following is getting bigger and bigger every day. Because you go around, we hear people say that, we have this program with Bhoe on morning and we should be looking at it. And since we start looking at it, we see that we're getting all these signs that we're getting. It is very positive, very, very positive. Again, I want to thank you very much. Listen off here.
Okay, thank you very much for calling. And you are right, the stress has really been on the ordinary man. The services to the ordinary citizen has really collapsed. The roads are horrendous all over the country. And yes, services to the ordinary citizen have been poor. And in addition to that, we have had loss of jobs, we have had loss of income, and the prices are going up. I write about that in my article today in The Guardian if you want to take a read. And it is really terrible. And now this this Standard & Poor's report really reinforces the situation that things are not good with the economy. And unless the government takes some dramatic steps we are not going to move from where we are, and we are going to continue to deteriorate. So we will continue to follow that and engage the issues with you. You have another follower, or you have Ambassador Granderson? All right, let's talk to Ambassador Granderson.
Good morning, Mr. Tiwari. Can you hear me?
Good morning. You can call me Bhoe. Is it all right if I call you Colin?
Absolutely no problem. Bhoe?
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Same here.
Yes. Now, it is wonderful to have you on the program and to represent your own extensive knowledge of Haiti, because you served there as ambassador to CARICOM, to Haiti. And the second thing is that it is important to have you here also to speak for the region. And I think that is also significant for the CARICOM entity. So I want to start you with something that we've been conversing about some time ago, which is that they had tried shortly after the president was assassinated, President Moise. They had started to try to put together a commission to find a solution to the Haitian crisis. And this is before the new prime minister was appointed. The new prime minister is now Ariel Henry. Has anything happened with that since? And what is the scenario there for trying to put things back on track?
The commission had been working for quite some time, and it met around the 18th of this month. They weren't really able to complete their work on the second day when they were trying to come up with an outcome document. The meeting was disrupted by persons who were not obviously from outside the group. In the meanwhile, a new prime minister has been put in place with the support of the core group, Dr. Ariel Henry. He's put together now a cabinet, new government. They have started to work. He held a meeting with the new government 2 days ago, and they're putting emphasis in improving security, organizing elections, and they're very important also trying to strengthen the judiciary. So that's where they stand at the moment.
Okay. Do you think things look more hopeful now than they would have looked, let's say, 2 weeks ago, in terms of stabilizing the situation in Haiti? Because it really looked like an unraveling situation in Haiti about 2 weeks ago. What is your view? Because I know that yours would be a considered, deliberate, thoughtful view.
Well, I think it's still early days. It's quite clear that this new government is not necessarily a government of consensus. They have selected a number of ministers from other parties apart from the ruling party. These other parties are for the most part seen as close to the ruling party. Civil society is not happy because they have not been included, they have not been consulted. A number of the major opposition parties have been critical, so that basically we find ourselves, or Haiti finds itself in a situation, the one that existed before the assassination of the president, meaning that this government, which is not widely accepted, which is not seen as being I'll simply add that at this particular point in time, it will be impossible to have a legitimate government for a very simple reason. All the institutions have collapsed. There's no executive, To get a new president, one would have to wait until elections to take place. Yes, a prime minister has been elected, but he is seen as a de facto prime minister. So these are not positive factors that underpin the present government. But I think that the new prime minister said he's going to reach out, that he's going to speak to members of the opposition. Now, I think it's very important to underline that when we say opposition, there's no one opposition party. Haiti has something like 150 political parties. Obviously, there are a number of them that are stronger, better organized than others. It simply means, therefore, getting a wide consensus is not easy. But as I said, the Prime Minister said he's willing to be up. He's going to speak, therefore, to the opposition. He's going to speak also to civil society. This will include, obviously, the private sector. And I imagine that if he's able to the support of a fairly wide base of the country, perhaps he's in a position to make a difference. But there are still a number of that, for example, the date of the elections is set time on the 26th of September. That's for the presidency, for the legislature, and the local government.
Could I ask you? Could I just stop you there? Is that so? The elections are going to be held in September, as originally planned. Is that correct?
That is not 100% clear. In the shorter press conference held by the new Prime Minister, he indicated that elections would be one of his priorities, but he did not give a date. So it's not clear if the date of 26 is going to hold. I'll simply say that for Haiti to be able to go to elections, there need to be enabling conditions, and those conditions have not been met at the present.
Yeah, that's a dicey situation because, I mean, tell me something, Colin, you have been ambassador to Haiti, you know the situation well, you have actual ground knowledge of what is happening in Haiti, you are well read on this subject. Explain to someone who is outside, I mean, most of our citizens of Trinidad and Tobago will read about Haiti, they know about Haiti, they know it's a CARICOM country, they know it's a Caribbean country, they may have a sense of the history. But tell me something about the structure of Haitian society. I mean, you have a government in power now that has been installed. This is, I mean, I don't know if it is within the Constitution or extra-constitutionally that they have acted, but you have a government installed. They are moving to an election. But what is the structure of Haitian society, and what is happening to the combustion in the place and the differences of opinion of all these forces? Can you speak to some of that?
Yes, I can. Haiti is an extremely complex society. You have the problem of what they call colorism, meaning that you have an elite, basically of foreign origin, some from the Middle East, some from Europe. You have a small cluster of mulattoes, many of whom obviously are part of the ruling, if I can call that, in the sense that they tend to be from the private sector. And then you have the large majority of persons of African origin. In addition to that, you also have the rivalry between what is called the North Haiti, which basically would be Cap Haitien, which used to be the capital of Haiti,
yes,
and the south of the country, which includes obviously Port-au-Prince, the present capital. One of the reasons why a number of persons in the north were very exercised after the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse 2 weeks ago was the fact that historically several of the presidents from the north have been assassinated in the south, including the historic leader Digicel. So that all these are factors at play. In addition, you have a country where the economy hasn't been working for quite some time. The humanitarian branch of the United Nations has pointed out there's something like 60% poverty. The GDP is extremely low. Unemployment is very, very high. So that you have obviously an economy, a skewed economy, with a small percentage of the population basically controlling the economy.
Yeah.
So this is the background. In addition, you have a situation of a fragmentation with regard not only with regard to the society, but as a reflection of that fragmentation, it's also visible in the politics. So I say that there are 150 political parties. The last presidential elections, there were 55 candidates. And I imagine that for the coming elections, we most probably have that same number, if not more.
Yeah. So we have... No, I was just going to kind of speak to some of the issues that you're raising. So in Haiti, then, you have an elite, and that elite, there is a racial or ethnic dimension to that. And then you have a political elite, you have an economic elite, and basically they operate at a level divorced from the mass of the society. They govern, they trade, they are involved in business, etc. But the mass of the society is not really involved. You have North versus South, which has a legacy of history since Dessalines. And you have a situation in which you have a large peasantry, you have an urban poor, large numbers, you have civil society as institutions there. How do all of these things connect? How do they coalesce at all in terms of the social order in the society?
Bhoe, you've put your finger, I think, on the fundamentals of the problem. Yes, you have a large urban poor constituted by persons who have left the countryside to come to the urban center, which they have not been able to find. Because of the high unemployment, obviously, there are lots of idle persons, and therefore, over the past years, there has been a phenomenon, and these gangs have become extremely powerful, especially in the urban centers, Port-au-Prince in particular. And these gangs have become armed, and they have been used by the political parties.
So there is a continuing link between gang membership, which is often involved in not just in crime, but in drugs and in thuggery, and the political leaders of the system in a multi-party system. And that is a factor in the politics of Haiti.
Yes, it is. It's been like that for quite some time. It's not a new phenomenon.
Yes, of course.
But it has continued.
It has escalated.
It has escalated, precisely. You also have a civil society. Civil society is extremely important in the sense that, again, multiplicity of civil society organizations of all types, some dealing with human rights, others are dealing with education, others bringing together peasant communities, so that, as I say, you have all these various concentrations of well, I could call them institutions and which have a great difficulty in getting their own voices heard and in coming together.
Yeah.
Now, one of the ideas that has been around for quite some time is the convening of a national dialogue, which would bring together this multiplicity of organizations, whether it's private sector, whether it's the civil society, whether it's political. They would all come together in a huge meeting, out of which would come a social contract, obviously based on consensus. They continue to speak of that, but again, it's not easy to bring all these various pieces together because of the fragmentation, because of the long history of hostility between the various groupings. But it's something that needs to be tried. It's something that I believe if they were able to get everybody together in a room, it would not be easy. All right, for example, even the Commission to Find a Haitian Solution that brought together hundreds of various organizations, they had quite some difficulty when they met for the very first time. But they were able to overcome those difficulties and to be able to move forward. So it's not impossible, very difficult, but not impossible.
So fragmentation and fracture are a feature of the culture of Haiti, evolved over a long period of time and continuing.
Yes.
Okay. What about the role of the diaspora? Haiti has a large diaspora outside of Haiti. Do they play a role in this?
The diaspora, obviously, it's important, if only from the point of view of remittances. But the diaspora is also, I think, important. One of the things one doesn't hear very important when speaking of Haiti is development. Yes. We have the politics, we have the difficulties, but we don't hear talk of development.
You don't hear about progress either. Yeah.
Well, the progress will come with development.
Yes, of course.
But the Haitian diaspora, for the most part, has done very well for itself. There are a number of persons who are well trained in a variety of areas, of areas that are important for the development of Haiti. So yes, they contribute through remittances, but they are willing. A number of them have returned
to play a constructive developmental role.
Yes, they've opened companies. Some of them have done well, others have not. Some of them have lost their investments. But that willingness, that will to return and to help the country by any means, whether it's from outside or by coming back into the country, that will is extremely strong. So yes, the diaspora has a very important role to play.
What about the
as a matter of fact,
go ahead, finish your thought.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the new government has underlined the importance of the diaspora in the work that it wishes to do.
Yeah, but the governments talk about this thing, but they don't really harness that resource. And you know, one of the things with the diaspora, once you leave your country and you go abroad, you tend to be much more independent in thinking and in resolve, and that could be very contentious with political people who want you to follow and to fall in line. You know, that is always a challenge. What about the geopolitical interests? You have the UN there, you have CARICOM, of course, and I'll ask you a question about CARICOM in a minute. You have the OAS, you have US, you have Canada, EU. What's happening?
Well, you have this grouping of some of the major actors in Haiti, and it's called the core group. It's the United States, Canada, France, the European Union, Germany. And this group, it's well organized.
CARICOM is not in that core group?
No, CARICOM doesn't. CARICOM is CARICOM doesn't have a presence as such in Haiti. There's a presence of the Bahamas, but the Bahamas is not called to meetings of the core group.
Okay.
I think going back to 2004, there was a resolution that mentioned that CARICOM was a member of the core group, but not having a presence, a permanent CARICOM presence as such on the ground leaves the CARICOM at a disadvantage from that point of view.
Okay.
So the core group meets on a regular basis. They are basically an actor because they keep in contact with the various Haitian actors, political, private sector, civil society to a certain extent. They put out a number of statements. And for example, about 10 days ago, they took the position that the acting prime minister should step down and the prime minister designate should take over power.
Office, yes, they have managed that process.
And precisely, so that they are a powerful group and they're extremely influential in the politics of Haiti. Because obviously of this interventions in the politics of Haiti, they are being increasingly cried by the political parties and by civil society.
Yeah.
They're seen as partisan. They've been very supportive of the president during his period of governance. And again, because of the fact that they intervened to put in place this new government, again, obviously deepens the sense of frustration of the Haitian organizations that believe that they should have a say in what takes place in their country.
Okay, so here is a situation in which the core group, in which Haiti is not represented at all, have really installed a president interim in the process, and that president has, the president has put, a prime minister, who has put together a cabinet, and basically he will call elections either in September or some other period, and basically that will then determine the future of Haiti. Where
Bhoe, yes. Yes, but.
Yes, but. Okay. Tell me the but.
Haiti needs to have good elections. If the elections are not seen as free and fair,
but you had 20%
if they're not seen as being transparent and credible, which is precisely what took place in 2015, 2016.
Yeah, when Moise became president, less than about 20% of the population voted. And the hard figures that came out showed that he got like 6% of the vote. Although he claimed more. Yeah.
Okay, so therefore, if you don't have credible, transparent elections, if you don't have a good turnout of the electorate, whatever government that comes from such elections will find itself in the same position as President Moise when he took office in 2017.
All right, we are coming close to the news now, and I want to make this question central because of your role and because of its importance to the region. What is CARICOM's role in all of this, and what would CARICOM like to see? I will mention the 2 or 3 things that I know. One, CARICOM offered help in 2019 to help to resolve the situation when President Moise was in fact still president and alive in the country. Secondly, Haiti chose to invite the OAS instead to come into Haiti with a mission. Thirdly, I know CARICOM has been liaising with the Secretary General of the UN. That was reported publicly, and the Secretary General of the UN, has welcomed CARICOM's desire and willingness and expression of interest in becoming involved and helping to resolve the crisis. What is CARICOM's position and role in all of this now?
There's a whole dimension that is not mentioned at all, or if so, episodically, which is that yes, Haiti is a member of the Caribbean community, and as such, Haiti does enjoy the fruits of what we call functional cooperation. Yeah. For example, several years ago, a lot of work was done with the Haiti Disaster Management Agency. This was done through SEDIMA. and therefore they were able to reinforce their own capacity, and they can also depend on assistance from SEDINA. There are a number of other areas where Haiti can benefit from which, unfortunately, they have not taken full advantage. I think it's also very important to underline that in 2021, just after Haiti became a member of CARICOM, CARICOM had a presence, an office in Haiti, and this office played a very important role in training a number of the public servants with regard to things like trade, taxation, which were important elements of the operations of the single market and economy. In 2020, I'm getting my dates mixed up now. In 2004, it was closed during the difficulties with Aristide. It was reopened again for a short while, which means therefore that a number of different public servants have been trained either through sending CARICOM instructors into the country to help, or having persons seconded to work in customs, to work in our tax offices, and to work in other areas in order to strengthen their own capacity. So this is something which has been ongoing, which I believe that Haiti needs to take far more seriously. And that's why I said that the issue of development is not underlined enough. Haiti needs a public administration that is effective. Too many things are done by non-governmental organizations, provision of education, provision of health. These normally are areas where the state has the authority to make things happen.
You think CARICOM, you think CARICOM will get an opportunity to play any role at all in the resolution of this crisis, leading up ultimately to the elections and a new government?
CARICOM stands willing and ready to help. We're willing to help bring the various factions, the various parties, organizations together. But CARICOM can't do anything unless it's invited by the Haitian authorities. And as you mentioned, since 2019...
Can I stop you there? So there are two issues. One is whoever is in power in Haiti, that would be the Prime Minister at this time, the new Prime Minister installed. And the second issue would be the core group, which is really a group of outside countries with geopolitical interests that are very deep in Haiti. And CARICOM really, their invitation is dependent on these two entities.
No, it's not dependent on the core group. It's dependent on the Haitian authorities.
On the Haitian authorities, okay.
But if we go back to 2004, when under Aristide, the core group was there, and CARICOM was able to work with the core group and in bringing the Haitian political parties together in trying to find an outcome. So it's not. I don't think it's impossible for CARICOM to work with the core group.
All right. Okay. So I have to close the discussion now because we're up for time for the news. And I want to thank you very much for coming. I hope we can have a further discussion on this because this is important. It's interesting. It's valuable for CARICOM to know. It's valuable for our citizens in Trinidad and Tobago to understand. So I want to thank you, Mr. Colin Granderson, Ambassador of CARICOM to Haiti, for this conversation this morning. And I want to close by saying we have a situation in Haiti that could lead, that in which you have a transition government now. We could end up with civil war. We could have elections in September or after. The issue is participation. The issue is legality and constitutionality. And ultimately, whatever happens, whether within the Constitution or outside, the ultimate legitimacy of the government, which can only rest with massive participation by the electorate in what is seen to be a free and fair elections. Are you able to say yes or no to that response?
view with regard to the possibility of civil war. But yes, these are things that needed to be done, bring parties together to put in place the conditions for good elections.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Granderson, for being with us this morning. And now we pass on to the news. This is Brighter Morning with Bhoe.